You use some of the dumbest words in English every day, but their original meanings are so ridiculous they sound completely fake. From royal titles that basically meant bread keeper to insults meaning blessed. We'll uncover 39 everyday words whose backstories make absolutely zero sense. Some came from misheard phrases, some from bad jokes, some from superstition. Once you hear them, you'll never look at these words normally again. We'll destroy a few popular classroom explanations your teacher probably repeated, and you'll walk away with unfair advantage in every language trivia game. So if you're ready to ruin English forever, let's start. The word posh and its fake cruise ship acronym. For a word that screams luxury, posh has hilariously messy roots. People love saying it came from port out, starboard home on British liners. The story claims rich passengers sailing between England and India chose shadier cabins. Their tickets supposedly carried the letters POSH for better sides. But when historians checked actual passenger lists and tickets, no such markings appeared. The word posh only shows up in print much later than Victorian steamships. Etymologists think it probably came from British slang for money or dandy clothing. So the glamorous cruise code is just a stubborn backronym people won't drop. Ironically, the fake story feels fancier than the likely truth about slang. Why people think F means for unlawful carnal knowledge. This famously rude four-letter word has spawned more fake histories than most countries. One popular legend claims it stands for unlawful carnal knowledge on legal documents. According to the myth, medieval English courts wrote those words above adulterers' punishments. People imagine jail doors stamped with those letters, turning bureaucracy into bad language. But real court records show long Latin phrases, not neat little English acronyms. The word itself appears in handwritten English texts from around the late Middle Ages. It lines up better with old Germanic verbs meaning to strike or move. Over time, it slid from rough physical meaning into a taboo bedroom insult. So the legal paper origin is just modern wordplay painted onto dirty history. Golf absolutely does not mean gentlemen only, ladies forbidden. For a sport obsessed with etiquette, golf has a surprisingly childish fake expansion. You've probably heard people joke it means gentlemen only, ladies forbidden on old clubhouses. The joke imagines snooty Scottish clubs literally banning women with an acronym sign. In reality, early Scottish golf records show plenty of women swinging clubs too. The word itself comes from Middle Scots words like goof or golv, meaning club. Those words trace back to old Germanic roots about hitting, not social gatekeeping. Clubs absolutely discriminated later, but they did it with rules, not hidden initials. The acronym only appears in the 20th century, long after the word existed. So the phrase survives mainly because it's a punchy joke about snobby traditions. No, news didn't come from northeast, west, south. If news really came from compass points, journalists would love that branding. The myth says early newspapers bragged about stories from north, east, west, south. People imagine old mastheads proudly turning the compass into a marketing acronym. But in English, news simply started as the plural of new things. It meant recent events or new tidings, especially in letters and announcements. You can see similar patterns in French nouvelle and other European languages. No medieval printer ever needed a compass trick to sell juicy stories. The acronym appeared much later as a clever classroom explanation that stuck. Real news traveled slowly, but the fake etymology spread almost instantly in conversation. The restaurant myth behind tip. As to ensure promptness, tips today decide how stressed your waiter in New York feels tonight. A popular story claims tip stands for to ensure promptness on little boxes. Victorian taverns are supposedly pictured with brass containers engraved with those neat initials. Customers, the story says, dropped coins before service to guarantee speedy attention. But when researchers actually look at old receipts and tavern signs, nothing appears. The word tip already existed in British thieves' slang, meaning to hand over. It moved from secretly passing information to quietly sliding coins across tables. Only in the 20th century did people retrofit a polite acronym explanation. So the phrase survives mainly on cafe walls, not in real historical ledgers. The shipping legend that shit meant ship high in transit. This blunt little word gets dressed up in one of language's funniest legends. The story goes that wooden ships carried manure from European ports across the Atlantic. To keep the cargo dry, crates were allegedly marked "Ship High in Transit." Those letters supposedly stopped the waste from fermenting and filling holds with deadly gas. But shipping manifests from the Age of Sail show no such tidy instructions. Sailors wrote long phrases, not cute four-letter labels conveniently matching a rude word. The actual term comes from older Germanic roots related to excrement and separation. It later hardened into the everyday swear you hear in movies and arguments. The nautical acronym sticks around because it turns poop jokes into fake maritime history. How mussel literally comes from Latin for little mouse. Every time someone flexes in a gym mirror, a tiny Roman mouse is involved. In classical Latin, doctors used the word musculus, meaning little mouse, for muscles. They thought a contracting bicep looked like a mouse wriggling under the skin. Medical writers in the Roman world repeated the image while describing anatomy and movement. Over centuries, musculus moved into French and then into Middle English as muscle. The spelling kept the SC cluster, even when English pronunciation quietly shifted away. No one in modern Los Angeles gyms imagines rodents running under their shoulders. Yet the original image still squeaks behind every bodybuilding poster and workout app. It's one of those rare origins where ancient doctors were unintentionally poetic. Salary began as Roman soldiers being paid in salt. Modern office workers get salaries through bank transfers, not little bags of salt. Yet the word still points back to Roman soldiers on distant frontiers. In Latin, sal meant salt, a precious commodity for preserving meat. Roman administrators sometimes provided salt allowances or related payments to their troops. From that, Latin salarium described money connected to salt or official expenses. As the Roman Empire's systems influenced medieval Europe, the word shifted toward regular pay. Old French turned it into salaire, which entered Middle English as salary. Today, nobody in Chicago or London expects salt with their job contract, but each monthly paycheck echoes the days when salt backed imperial logistics. Robot started as a Czech word for forced labor. Before robots communicated floors and drove cars, the word belonged to a Czech playwright. In 1920, Karel Čapek staged a science fiction play in Prague about artificial workers. He called it RUR and named the mechanical servants roboti, from Czech robota. In his region, robota meant drudgery or days of unpaid feudal labor. It described peasants forced to work their landlords' fields under Habsburg-era systems. Čapek's story pushed that idea into a future where human-like workers revolt. The play spread across Europe and reached English-speaking theaters a few years later. Translators kept the word robot, and it quickly entered science fiction and newspapers. So every friendly household robot still carries the shadow of coerced peasant labor. Villain once just meant a regular farm worker peasant. McCoy someone a villain today suggests capes, mustaches, and elaborate evil speeches. In medieval France and England, though, the word pointed at muddy work clothes. It came from Old French villain, meaning a serf or farm laborer. These people worked on estates tied to villages and their lords' fields. Because the upper classes wrote the laws, peasants often looked suspicious on paper. Over time, villain slid from describing low status to implying bad character generally. By the time English theater blossomed, the word stuck to storybook bad guys. The original link to villages and fields faded behind stage lighting and melodrama. So every comic book villain technically carries a forgotten pitchfork in their job description. How lady started as loaf kneader in Old English. Elegant ladies in period dramas owe their title to bread dough. In Old English, a hlefdige was literally the loaf kneader of a household. She managed grain, bread, and food supplies in early English farming communities. Bread control meant power, because families depended on stored grain surviving the winter. As Anglo-Saxon society developed ranks, the title followed women of high status. The practical kitchen responsibility slowly became a mark of noble household management. Later, French influence after the Norman conquest softened sounds into lady in English courts. By Victorian times, the word floated far above flour sacks and wooden troughs. Still, behind every tiara and ball gown hides someone who once managed dough. Why lord originally meant keeper of the bread. Just like lady, the word lord began in the pantry, not parliament. Old English speakers used hlaford, meaning loaf guardian or bread keeper for household heads. This person controlled food storage, grain distribution, and who got fed during shortages. In farming communities, that authority made the difference between surviving winter or starving. As power concentrated in warrior elites, the household bread keeper became a regional ruler. The title traveled into feudal England, attaching itself to landowners and noble families. Legal documents and church records hardened lord into a political and religious title. By the time London law courts stabilized, most people forgot the bread connection. Yet the original job description was basically the guy watching the pantry. The weird story of nickname born from an nickname. Nickname looks simple today, but it's hiding a little linguistic car crash. In Middle English, people used name for an additional or extra name. Meant also or in addition, nothing to do with trickery. When phrases like an name were spoken quickly, sounds started sliding around. Listeners began to hear a nickname, sticking the N onto the next word. Scribes eventually wrote what people heard, changing name into neckname on paper. Over time, spelling settled into the modern form we use without thinking. The original meaning of extra name still fits schoolyard nicknames perfectly today. It's one of those rare cases where mishearing accidentally improved the word's punch. How newt was accidentally split off from an eft. Newt sounds like a perfectly normal animal name, but it's actually a mistake. In older English, the creature was called an eft, especially in countryside speech. People said an eft so often that the boundary between words blurred. Listeners gradually reinterpreted the phrase as a neft, pushing the N sideways. Scribes began copying what they heard, and newt slowly appeared in written English. Meanwhile, the older form eft survived only in dialects and biology textbooks. So, the same animal ended up with two names, one created by mishearing. The shift feels tiny, but it left permanent footprints in dictionaries and field guides. Every time someone draws a cartoon newt, they're sketching a centuries-old listening error. How apron came from people mishearing a napron. The humble kitchen apron also owes its name to a sliding letter accident. In Middle English, people borrowed napron from Old French for a protective cloth. Servants and cooks wore a napron while working near open hearth fires. As the phrase was spoken quickly in busy kitchens, sounds blurred together. Listeners began to hear an apron, moving the N from noun to article. Writers followed speech, and napron quietly faded from recipes and house inventories. The new spelling, apron, took over by the time printed cookbooks became common. Modern chefs in New York or Paris rarely realize they're wearing a misheard word. A tiny shift in pronunciation ended up hanging around every restaurant neck. The strange way umpire fell out of a numpair. Sports fans yelling at umpires are really shouting at a medieval compromise maker. In Middle English, a numpair was a third party who broke ties. Two disputing sides picked this extra person to make a final decision. Phrases like a numpair were common in legal and local market arguments. Over time, people began hearing an umpair, sliding the N into the article. The spelling changed, shaving off the N and leaving umpire in English. When baseball appeared in 19th century America, it borrowed the term for rule enforcers. The job shifted from market disputes to strike zones and foul lines instead. But the word still carries that original idea of a deciding third person. How island got a random S jammed in from isle. Island is one of those words where spelling and pronunciation flatly refuse cooperation. Old English used Egland or Eland with no S sound in the middle. After the Norman conquest, French spellings flooded English, including the word isle from Latin. Scribes saw isle with an S and mashed the spellings together. They added an S into Eland, producing a hybrid form closer to French appearance. Pronunciation, however, stayed stubbornly Germanic, never picking up that inserted consonant. By the time standardized spelling arrived, island with an S was already normal. School children in Britain and America have cursed that silent letter ever since. It's basically a fossil of medieval scribes trying to impress Latin-trained readers. Orange lost its first letter after an orange mishearing. The word orange wandered across continents and languages before losing a leading letter. It began with Sanskrit and Persian terms for the fragrant fruit, then moved west. Arabic traders spread it into Mediterranean regions, where it entered Old French as orange. When English borrowed it, people sometimes said an orange in certain dialects. Listeners gradually reinterpreted that phrase as an orange, shifting the N forward. The older form survived in Spanish, naranja, and similar words in other languages. English kept the version with the clipped beginning, matching how people actually spoke. So every supermarket orange carries a tiny history of sailors, markets, and misheard articles. It's also the reason English famously struggles to rhyme anything perfectly with orange. Why cherry comes from people butchering the word cherice. Cherry looks singular today, but it started life wearing a plural disguise. Middle English borrowed cherice from Old French, which referred to the fruit generally. English speakers assumed the S on cherice marked a plural, like apples. They began thinking of one fruit as a cherry, dropping the final sound. Over time, that new form appeared in market records and recipe collections across England. The older cherice slowly vanished, surviving only in etymology books and linguistics lectures. Meanwhile, cherries became the regular plural, building a new pattern on a misunderstanding. Today, nobody guessing its origin would imagine a misread French ending behind it. But every cherry pie owes its name to medieval shoppers misreading their market French. Pea exists because English speakers misheard peas as plural. Just like cherry, the word pea was carved out of an older form. In Middle English, people said peas for the vegetable, whether singular or plural. It worked like rice or corn, describing the food without counting pieces. Over time, English speakers started assuming peas sounded like a plural ending. They split off a new singular, a pea, to match other nouns. Writers recorded the change, and cookbooks began mentioning peas as countable little spheres. The original uncountable peas mostly survives in the dish name peas pudding. Every bag of frozen peas at a modern supermarket reflects that reinterpretation. A simple misreading turned mushy medieval porridge into individually counted green side dishes. How girl once meant any young person, boy or girl. The word girl used to be far less specific about who it described. In Middle English texts, girla, girla, or similar spellings meant a young person generally. Writers used it for children of either sex, especially of lower social status. Other terms, like boy, developed their own meanings, sometimes linked with servants or apprentices. Gradually, usage narrowed girl toward female children and unmarried young women specifically. By the time printed novels appeared in London, the modern sense dominated storytelling. Historical documents still show that older, broader meaning hiding in parish records and plays. It's a reminder that categories of age and gender shifted across centuries. So reading medieval English requires remembering that girl once pointed at boys too. Meat used to mean basically any kind of food. When medieval English speakers talked about meat, they often meant dinner in general. Old usage treated meat as a broad term for solid food. It covered vegetables, grains, and animal products, not just roast or steak. People contrasted meat with drinks, not with vegetables or bread specifically. Over time, more precise cooking vocabularies developed in English households and royal kitchens. Words like victuals and provisions handled general supplies, while meat narrowed. By the early modern period, meat focused mainly on animal flesh for eating. Religious fasting rules and medical ideas about diet helped separate meat from other foods. Today's menus still reflect that shift, even though the older sense lingers in phrases. Why nice used to mean ignorant, stupid, or useless. Nice sounds harmless today, but it once carried a pretty savage insult. In medieval English, it came from Latin necius, meaning ignorant or not knowing. Early uses described foolish behavior, silly clothing, or people lacking common sense. Writers in England threw it at characters they considered lazy, weak, or ridiculous. During the Renaissance, the meaning drifted toward precise, delicate, or finely judged. By the 18th century, polite society used nice for refined manners and tastes. Then, everyday speech softened it further into a generic compliment for almost anything pleasant. That drift explains why older literature sometimes makes nice fellow sound weirdly negative. The word traveled from harsh insult to lukewarm praise without ever stopping completely. Silly started out, meaning blessed, happy, and innocent. If someone in early medieval England called you silly, they meant it kindly. The word began as salig or seli, meaning blessed, fortunate, or spiritually favored. It could describe holy people, peaceful lives, or fields enjoying good harvests. As centuries passed, it slid toward softer ideas like innocent, harmless, or naive. Writers then pushed it further, using silly for people lacking judgment or seriousness. By the time children's stories became popular in print, the weaker meaning dominated. The original sense of blessed survived only in related words like sullen and seely. Modern English speakers usually hear only the clumsy, childish shade of the word. So every time someone calls a cartoon character silly, there's a hidden halo involved. How awful changed from full of awe to simply terrible. Awful used to describe towering cathedrals and mountains, not bad customer service. It grew from awe plus a suffix meaning full of, like graceful. Early writers used it for things that inspired reverence, fear, or deep respect. You might call a medieval cathedral or a thunderstorm awful in a praising way. As English shifted, everyday speakers began using it sarcastically for unpleasant experiences. Slowly, the negative shade overtook the older, solemn, positive one in conversation. The split left words like awesome to carry the admiring side of awe. By 20th century America, awful nearly always meant bad, gross, or deeply disappointing. The word quietly turned from stained glass reverence into a complaint about airplane food. The dark origin of nightmare, as a demon sitting on you. Nightmare wasn't originally about a bad dream. It was about something sitting there. In old Germanic folklore, a mare was a malicious spirit or creature. People believed it visited sleepers at night, pressing on their chest painfully. Victims reported waking unable to move, breathing heavily under an invisible weight. Communities in England and Scandinavia blamed this presence for terrifying nighttime experiences. The word combined night with this mare, forming a name for the phenomenon. Only later did it slide toward meaning any frightening dream or situation generally. Modern medicine explains sleep paralysis, where the brain wakes before the body. But the original picture was a crushing visitor, not just stressful dream material. Quarantine literally means 40 days in Old Italian. The word quarantine started in medieval port cities, not modern hospitals or airports. During plague outbreaks, places like Venice forced arriving ships to wait offshore. Crews and passengers had to remain isolated for around 40 days before landing. Officials believed this pause helped sickness burn out before reaching crowded streets. They called the enforced isolation quarantena, from Italian words meaning about 40. The number carried religious and cultural weight, echoing biblical periods of 40 days. Over time, the term spread into other European languages dealing with contagious diseases. Modern health agencies expanded it beyond exact day counts, keeping the core concept. So every time news reports mention quarantine, old Venetian harbor rules echo faintly behind. Why disaster comes from believing in a bad star. Disaster once pointed literally at the sky when things went horribly wrong. The word comes from Italian and French roots meaning ill-starred or bad star. Astrologers in Europe believed certain planetary alignments brought misfortune and chaos to humans. A failed harvest or shipwreck might be blamed on unfriendly constellations overhead. When the term entered English, it carried that sense of cosmic misalignment. Gradually, the astrological explanation faded, but the dramatic flavor stayed in common speech. Newspapers in the 19th century used disaster for floods, fires, and train crashes. Today, we apply it to everything from hurricanes to failed movie openings. Behind each headline, though, sits the old idea of stars turning against you. Sarcasm literally means ripping flesh off with your words. Sarcasm sounds playful in teen comedies, but its Greek root is brutal. The word comes from sarkazane, meaning to tear flesh, like a wild animal. Ancient writers used it metaphorically for bitter, cutting speech that wounds listeners deeply. The image compares sharp words to teeth tearing into someone's body. As the term traveled through Latin and French, the gruesome literal meaning softened. By the time it reached English, it described a certain mocking, cutting tone. Writers in London salons used it for wit that humiliated rather than charmed. Modern dictionaries still mention that tearing flesh origin for people who enjoy word history. So next time someone says, "nice shirt," sarcastically, imagine linguistic teeth behind it. Alcohol comes from an Arabic word for a very fine powder. Alcohol didn't start in bars. It began in medieval Arabic laboratories and workshops. Arabic scholars used alcohol for a fine powdered antimony used as eye cosmetic. The term came to mean any purified, subtle substance created by careful extraction. European alchemists learned distillation techniques from Arabic texts translated in Spanish centers. They borrowed alcohol for purified spirits and other concentrated chemical substances. Over time, everyday English narrowed it mainly to intoxicating drinks like wine and whiskey. The older chemical sense survived in phrases like rubbing alcohol and technical writing. That journey runs from Middle Eastern cosmetics to German beer halls and American cocktails. A simple laboratory term ended up printed on warning labels and party invitations everywhere. Ketchup traveled from Chinese fish brine to American fries. Ketchup seems inseparable from American diners, yet its story starts in Southeast Asia. Sailors from Britain encountered a fermented fish sauce called ketchup in Chinese ports. They loved the salty umami punch and brought the idea back to Europe. English cooks tried copying it using anchovies, mushrooms, or walnuts in their recipes. Only in 19th century America did tomatoes become the main ingredient instead. Factories in places like Pittsburgh bottled sweetened tomato ketchup for growing urban markets. The sauce gradually lost its fishy origins and became a standard burger companion. Languages kept versions of the old name even while the recipe transformed completely, so every red squeeze on French fries hides a long voyage through oceans and experiments. How hazard started life as the name of a dice game. Hazard today sounds like a safety manual word, but it started in gambling houses. In medieval Europe, hazard was a popular dice game played in taverns. Crusaders and merchants likely picked it up from Arabic-speaking regions around the Mediterranean. The original game had complicated rules, risky bets, and lots of shouting. Because players took serious chances, the name began to symbolize risk itself. Writers started using hazard more broadly for danger, uncertainty, or risky undertakings. By the industrial age, it appeared in discussions of mines, factories, and workplaces. Modern warning labels and safety videos still rely on that repurposed game title. A medieval pastime at crowded tables quietly lent its name to global risk management. Mortgage literally means you're making a death pledge. Signing a mortgage in a bank office sounds dry, but the origin isn't. The word comes from Old French mortgage, literally dead pledge. In medieval law, the dead part meant the pledge ended one of two ways. Either the borrower repaid everything, or the land effectively died to them. English lawyers adopted the term as property deals became more formal and widespread. Over centuries, the phrase merged into a single word in legal documents. By modern times, mortgage simply meant a long-term loan secured by real estate. Few homeowners in Canada or Britain ever think about that grim original label. Still, the phrase captures how heavily a house loan can sit on shoulders. Pandemonium was just Milton's name for hell's capital city. Before pandemonium described noisy chaos, it was a very specific address in literature. In the 17th century, English poet John Milton wrote his epic Paradise Lost. He needed a grand name for the capital city of the fallen angels. Milton built Pandemonium from Greek roots meaning all demons or all spirits together. In his poem, devils hold council there, plotting revenge against heaven and humanity. Readers loved the thunderous sound and dramatic imagery of the invented place name. Writers soon borrowed it metaphorically for any scene of loud confusion or uproar. By the 19th century, newspapers used pandemonium for riots, markets, and rowdy parliaments. A single poet's coinage escaped its book and colonized everyday speech worldwide. Why clue comes from a ball of yarn called a clue. Clue originally had nothing to do with detectives. It belonged in spinning rooms. In Older English, a clue was a ball of thread or yarn. Greek mythology told of Theseus escaping the labyrinth using a guiding thread. English retellings described that life-saving ball of string as a clue. Writers then used clue metaphorically for anything that helped someone find their way. The sense shifted from physical yarn to hints and guiding pieces of information. Spelling later changed to clue, matching how people heard the word in conversation. Detective fiction seized on it, turning clues into central pieces of every mystery. So, every clue board or puzzle still secretly points back to tangled string. Pandemic mashes Greek roots, meaning pertaining to all people. Pandemic sounds very technical, but its parts come from straightforward ancient Greek words. Pan means all, while demos refers to people or the population. Classical medical writers used similar combinations when describing diseases affecting whole communities. Modern 19th century public health officials formalized pandemic alongside epidemic and endemic. They needed clear labels for outbreaks that crossed regions, borders, and even continents. The term appeared in scientific reports long before recent global health crises hit headlines. During major 20th century flu outbreaks, newspapers taught the word to wider audiences worldwide. Recent events pushed it even deeper into everyday conversations and policy speeches. Yet, at its core, the word simply marks sickness that concerns all people. How sandwich was just named after a bored gambling earl. The sandwich got its name from a nobleman who didn't want greasy cards. In 18th century London, John Montagu, the 4th Earl of Sandwich, loved gambling. He reportedly asked servants to bring meat between bread slices at the table. That way he could keep playing without needing utensils or washing hands. Other players started ordering the same as sandwich, copying his lazy innovation. The habit spread from that social circle into London's coffee houses and taverns. Soon, recipe books mentioned sandwiches, treating the Earl's preference as a general dish. By the time it reached America, the name was completely detached from him. Now, every lunchbox carries a tiny echo of one aristocrat's unwillingness to pause gambling. Bluetooth was randomly named for a medieval Viking king. For a technology term, Bluetooth has an origin that sounds like a history joke. In the 1990s, engineers in Scandinavia were developing a wireless communication standard. They wanted phones, laptops, and headsets to talk over short distances easily. One engineer, fascinated by Viking history, suggested naming it after King Harald Bluetooth. Harald united warring Danish and Norwegian factions in the late 10th century. The engineers liked the metaphor of uniting devices the way he united tribes. They kept his nickname and even designed a logo from runic initials. What began as a placeholder name in meeting notes became the final brand. Now, billions of gadgets quietly carry a medieval Danish king's dental nickname. The total made-up acronym story behind the word OK. OK might be the most common casual word with the weirdest fake origins. People have claimed it stands for everything from army phrases to shipping abbreviations. One popular story links it to "all correct," a jokey misspelling in newspapers. In 19th century Boston, editors loved playful abbreviations like that in humorous columns. OK appeared there, then spread through political campaigns and telegraph messages nationwide. The letters were short, punchy, and easy to send over early communication lines. Because the real path felt boring, people later invented grander acronyms around it. Folklore attached it to wars, factories, and even supposed Native American phrases. Yet, the surviving printed evidence points back to jokes and political slogans, not codes.